We're with David Shapiro. David is a criminal defense attorney in San Diego, California, and he's agreed to answer some online questions related to drug offenses and various defenses. With that said, let's go into the first question. The first question was from Becky. Becky said, my son is going to San Diego State University, was charged with possession and drug sale. He has no previous record and is an excellent student. We are going to fight the charges, and I believe there is limited evidence, but if this is not dropped, do you know if he will be expelled from school in addition to legal penalties, and what are my options?
Okay, Becky, well, a couple of things. It's actually a pretty good question on many fronts. First off, possession of a controlled substance 9 out of 10 times now is going to be a misdemeanor in California. The issue is going to be whether or not it was possession for sale. I mean, you mentioned 2 charges, or was it an actual sale? Meaning, did he possess enough where the prosecution can argue that he was possessed for purpose of sale, or is it an actual sales case? That's one distinction. As far as how things work with the school, he will likely have an administrative review or student conduct review board issue, assuming the school finds out about it. And that's a whole other issue, irrespective of what happens in criminal court. So, sometimes you could delay any school action to sort of trail it behind criminal court, and they're okay with that. Other times, in my experience, they want to deal with it right away, no matter what happens in criminal court, based on their bylaws and everything that go with it with the university. So, whether or not there's a criminal case, to whether or not the outcome works out the way that your son or you or the evidence should make it work out, he's still going to have an issue with the administrative law stuff. Generally speaking, I have done those types of hearings before with school boards. It all depends what the punishment is. A lot of times they give him options. If he were to accept responsibility early, it could be this. If he doesn't, and if he has sort of like a mini trial administratively, and they rule against him, the punishment could be steeper. If it looks like it's something complicated, I would definitely then recommend you hire someone to handle the administrative law aspect of it, and then hire someone like me to handle the criminal court case, and we would work side by side to make sure he's protected in both realms.
Okay, excellent. Next question was from Juan. Juan says, my brother was charged with drug transportation from Mexico. He is currently in jail pending trial. Do you have experience with these case types, and what can I expect?
Okay, yeah, I definitely do, Juan, and a lot of it will depend. Either way, I have experience, whether it's federal or state. Obviously, when you're dealing with smuggling drugs across the border, it could be a federal crime. More times than not, it is. If it's a lower level amount of drugs, it could be a state crime, just picked up here in South Bay, in the Chula Vista Courthouse in San Diego County. Sometimes the feds don't want to prosecute it as a federal offense, and the states pick it up. As far as what can you expect as the case proceeds closer to trial, obviously, knowledge is key in these types of cases. What I mean by that is, you can your brother come across the border with kilos upon kilos of drugs, but if he didn't have knowledge that he possessed those drugs, whether in his car or in a suitcase or whatever the case may be, it would be difficult for the prosecutor to prove that. A lot of times, though, these people come across and they make a statement basically giving the case to the prosecutor saying, yeah, I knew there were drugs, I just didn't know what kind. Well, that's really not a defense. Once in a blue moon, you have a successful defense for a duress or necessity type of situation if these people allege that they've been threatened to bring the drugs across. Otherwise, harm is going to be done to them or a loved one. Not too successful, generally speaking. Courts or juries usually don't really buy into that often, although it is possible. As far as the trial goes, again, it would be up to the prosecutor to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that your brother knew that the vehicle he was driving possessed the drugs. Now, if he had the drugs on him, it's a lot more difficult to say, hey, I didn't know. But if the vehicle was, say, for example, out of his control for a period of time, or it wasn't his vehicle, he was just driving it, all those types of things, would lead to a reasonable interpretation of the evidence that he might not have known. And if the jury believes that, whether they believe it to be the case or whether they at the very least acknowledge that it's reasonable that it could have been the case, then your brother should be entitled to an acquittal. And hopefully he has a good defense attorney, because these cases, can be won. They're not the easiest cases in the world, though, because from a juror's perspective, they're going to look at it and say, well, that would never be me. So it would be hard to give your brother the benefit of the doubt unless things are presented in the right way.
Okay, excellent. Next one was from Jeff. Jeff asked, I've been charged with narcotics possession, intent to sell, but it was my roommates. What do you recommend?
Well, Jeff, it looks like you're going to need a good lawyer, because they need to prove that you had either constructive or actual possession of the drugs. Now, actual possession is easy. You get pulled over, it's on you. it's in your bag that you're carrying, that type of thing. When you share space with a person, they will need to prove that you had knowledge of it and that you actually possessed it, whether actively or constructively. What they're going to look for is where the drugs were found, who had access to that area, whose belongings were near that area, all those types of things. Was your roommate also charged? That's a factor that goes into it. So you definitely need yourself a good attorney, because a lot of times prosecutors will try to prove that it was yours through introduction of evidence of items known as dominion and control, D&C, it's referred to. Like, say, for example, they found the drugs on top of a dresser that had your mail but not your roommate's on it. Or it was a picture of you and your girlfriend or something like that right next to the drugs. That's how they try to prove possession, even if you weren't there, and especially in these shared homes or shared apartment type cases. So you definitely want to keep your mouth closed, don't admit anything, make sure you hire yourself a good attorney.
Okay, and the final question we had is from Doug. Doug asks, he says, I have 2 family members, they are married, in jail for manufacture of methamphetamine. They have asked me to find a lawyer. In my situation, is it best to get a single attorney for both of them, or should I get an attorney for each of them independently?
Well, Doug, it's probably in your best financial situation to try and get one attorney, because that attorney might give you a deal. But I can tell you that attorney, if they do that, might have some serious ethical issues as it relates to a potential conflict of interest. Now, some attorneys say, hey, you can get a conflict waiver, basically saying I can represent 2 people charged with a similar type of offense in the same case, as long as they know that they have the right to get their own attorney. In a case like that, you want to make sure the attorney you hire avails his or her client of any and all available defenses. So in a case like this, it would make the most sense to get each of them an individual attorney. Now, it might make a lot of sense to hire attorneys who work well with each other, who are familiar with each other and have dealt with similar type situations, as opposed to getting 2 attorneys who might not even know each other. So the best approach would be is to hire the attorney first and foremost that, go to that attorney that you guys like the most and ask that attorney, hey, if my family member's wife or spouse wants to handle this case, or hire an attorney to handle their case, who would you recommend and what do you suggest? It's probably the best move is to get 2 attorneys from separate law firms who work well together, though. So that way everyone's interests seem to be protected.
Excellent. If you have any other questions for David, he's agreed to answer your questions online in the comments section below. Just post them to the comments on YouTube and he'll get back to you with an answer. With that said, David, thanks for your time.
Yeah, my pleasure. Just remember, the laws may be changing on simple possession in California, decriminalizing or reducing to misdemeanors, but possession for sale and transportation and actual sale of narcotics, the penalties are just as harsh as they've always been in the state. So make sure you hire yourself a good attorney and keep your mouth closed.
Thanks, David.
All right, take care.